What's up, family? Thank you for tuning in to the DreamNation podcast. My name is Casanova. I'll be your host, and I'm excited to be bringing to you entrepreneurs, thought leaders, and trailblazers from around the world. Stay locked in with us because we're about to go on a journey that will change your life. What's up, Dream Nation? We are back again. In this episode right here, we're going to talk about so many things, but more importantly, we're going to talk about what's the mindset like if right now you're somebody who you feel like you're down and you're out, but you need to bounce back again, whether that means you were already at the top of the mountain or whether that means that you're still trying to find out where your top of the mountain is. I'm sure this guest right here is going to be able to tap into all of that. So without further ado, help me welcome to the show my friend, Chris Miles. Chris, you want to go ahead and say what's up to Dream Nation?
What's up, Dream Nation?
Man, it's a pleasure to have you on here. So I always like to start it off with the proper introduction of every single guest, and I think that yours is going to be pretty phenomenal. But talk to me about before you became a financial advisor to so many people and just telling them about how they could structure their financial situation, but at the same time, what are some pitfalls to look out for, how they could budget better before all of that, before being featured on things like Entrepreneurs on Fire, which is one of the shows that I love, and even writing a book, which is called, if I believe, Entrepreneur on Fire. Am I right?
Yeah, wrote that with John Lee Dumas and Tim Ferriss. Yeah.
You wrote that with them?
Uh-huh. Yep.
Got it. I love it. So before all of that, I always like to give the proper introduction so we can all be on the same page. Let's take it back to when you were just a young boy. Talk to me about who is Chris Miles?
Yeah, if you go back when I was a young boy, I was basically the kid that was like, I looked like I could do the truffle shuffle from Goonies, like I was kind of chubby, right?
Right.
And, I was less quiet and smart, like I was just that smart, quiet kid. Even like going into like middle school, like I started trying to hang out with the jocks and stuff and get into sports myself. But they all only wanted me around for copying their homework, right? Or copying my homework. So I was like, well, this sucks. Like, I don't want to be that guy, like, and I was like, seriously, like Rudy. If you've watched football movie, Rudy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I was seriously, even as a sophomore in high school, I was like 5'3", 130 pounds. I was trying to play football, like JV football, getting my trash handed to me, like just getting smeared left and right, especially because those guys were like, tackling dummy, get him. Like, and I'm like, I'm dead, and so like, I was always like the guy that was trying to, do things different. And so I pretended I was dumb for a time as a kid because I didn't want people copying my homework. Mm-hmm. But then I just like when they try to do it, I would just explain things in a dumb way. Like I was just like, it's just this. Like here's simply, I just explain it in very common language. And then even when I got out of high school, I moved to Japan for 2 years, and it's the same thing when you're talking to Japanese people in Japanese, especially about different concepts. You have to talk to them like they're 5.
Right.
So again, I had to dumb things down, right? And so I did that as a volunteer for like 2 years, and then came back to the U.S. And
so was that voluntarily or involuntarily?
Voluntarily. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I went there as a volunteer. So I did that for 2 years, kind of took a break in college for a bit, and then came back. And that's the thing. Like I ended up like majoring in sociology with a triple minor in psychology, Japanese, and ballroom dancing. So little known fact, I was actually one of the nation's top amateur ballroom dancers 20 years ago.
Wow. So, all right. I love it.
Yep. So if you've seen Dancing with the Stars, a lot of those professionals were dancing with me back in our younger years and stuff. So,
wow.
So anyways, so that's kind of what I was. I was just like this Renaissance man. I was never like great at any one thing, right? Like I was the guy that was just above average in a lot of things, which means I didn't get crap for scholarships, right? Because no one wants just above average. They want exceptional for something, right? But I was never exceptional in any one area. I was just good all around. And that actually became a strength eventually in business when I learned how to tap into that.
Got it. I love it. So talk to me about when you were young. Like, did you feel like that you did not fit in with a lot of people? Like, what triggered the, hey, let's go to Japan? Because that's totally different. I mean, some people, they go off to mission school or something like that. Like, was it faith-based? What took you to Japan?
Yeah. Again, as a kid, like I was just like, I didn't really have a lot of friends. I usually have like a few close friends. Right. But eventually, when I got to like about 18, right, I decided to reinvent myself because I grew up in a small town near Portland, Oregon. Okay. So everybody knew everybody. So when I turned 18, I decided to reinvent myself. I'm like, I could be whoever I want. So I became a social butterfly. I was like, how can I be the Ferriss Bueller? Like where he just somehow becomes friends and can relate to every type of group of people.
Right.
So I would just kind of like just float around in different groups, and all I have to do is just be a good listener, which I had done for years, being a quiet kid. And I would learn about stuff from people, and all I have to say is like, oh yeah, like this and this, because I just retain a lot of stuff, right? Like useless information. Another side note, I actually almost got on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire with the trivia. I got in the actual finals to get on the show, and I lost out to some other people. So.
Cool.
So I just keep this useless information, right? And so I'd use that to get to know people. And yeah, right about that same age, I kind of had like this big like Christian faith thing happen with me, right? Like I kind of grew up agnostic. I just kind of hopped around different people's churches and stuff. But I converted Christian, and that's why I went to Japan to teach about Christian stuff, which is totally foreign in an Asian country like that. So did that, was awesome, and learned a lot, and grew up a lot while I was out there. So I did that for 2 years. And then I came back to the US, and I was like, all right, let's get to work. Let's do this, and I kind of had a dream of bigger life. I didn't want to be the guy that was working for somebody, like I knew that if I wanted to have real freedom, I had to work for myself. I had to have, even if I was a consultant or independent contractor, I was like, I don't want to work for a corporation. I want to get hired by a corporation, get paid lots of money, and then leave that corporation, go somewhere else,
Got it. I love it. I had a phenomenal guest on the show, and his name was Peter Sage. And anyway, he was talking about, when he first started out and he was trying to decide if he wanted to work for someone else or if he wanted to start his own thing. And he brought up an interesting perspective. He was like, listen, if someone's going to pay me, let's even say $100,000, if I know that I want to get everything out of life that I'm worth, right? That's not to say I can't serve other people, but I want to try to live out my highest potential. If this job is worth $100,000 for someone to pay me that obviously means that I'm worth a lot more than that, or at least my skill set is worth a lot more than that. So why would I settle for the 100,000? And so I love it that you started off mission-based, faith-based, but then when you came back after you did your serving, you said, listen, it is time for me to go out and try to tap into my best potential. And so what was the first thing that, like, you come back, you're from Japan, right? And you're fresh off with a whole new mindset. What does that look like now? What are you going to go into?
Yeah. So that's where I was, majoring in sociology, had that triple minor, right, going on. And I was planning to go be a business consultant. But then when I got almost to the end of my bachelor's, I'm like, if I'm going to be a business consultant, shouldn't I have real life experience, not just book smarts, but like real life, like knowing how to run a business myself. Mm-hmm. So I actually dropped out of college with one, not even a class. It was one like study. Like all I had to do was take my thesis, condense it and publish it in a journal, and I'd have my bachelor's. So I dropped out before that was done, right? And I was like, all right, what am I going to do? And the first business opportunity that came up was being a financial advisor, right? And I was kind of like, if you've seen the movie, was it The Wedding Singer?
Yeah.
Where he's kind of like, when he's going in for a job at the bank, they're like, well, what kind of experience do you have? He's like, well, I like money. I got a jar up the top of my fridge that's got some money in it. I like to add more to it. That's where you come in, sir. Right? It's kind of like that.
Right.
So I kind of came on like that. Like money was always fascinating to me, even as a kid, but I didn't know anything about it because my dad just worked his tail off. He was like, I'm going to work until I die. That's how life is. Money doesn't grow on trees. What do you think I am, made of money? Like I grew up with that stuff.
Right.
My mom was an artist. She was like the opposite. She was very creative and she was in her own business, but her business was like, she believed she was a starving artist. So you basically would be broke until you die and then your artwork becomes worth something, right? So neither of them had like this great perspective of money. So I thought, well, hey, worst case, I learned about money. Best case, I even make some money learning about money, right?
Right.
So I did that and I actually started to like it. So I was like, I actually like teaching, and so I actually dropped out of college. I never got my bachelor's. I stayed dropped out. And so no degree other than an associate's degree in sociology. I mean, you can't do anything with that really. So I just went and started doing that. And I did that for 4 years until I realized financial advising actually doesn't work. Like nobody's retiring off this crap. And so that's when I had this like big shift in perspective.
Got it. I love it. And so how long did you do financial advising before are you still a financial advisor?
And now I'm an anti-financial advisor. So I teach people to do almost the opposite of financial advising. So yeah, from 2002 to 2006, I was the financial advisor, right? And then I started realizing that, like, one, business owners didn't really believe a lot of things I taught, because I was telling people, save your money, save it for the long haul. If the market goes down, put in more, because I came in during Y2K, right? Like, I was telling people, hey, it's going down, it's on sale, buy now, which is a bunch of bull crap, by the way. And then when it was going up, I tell people, hey, buy more, it's going up, right? Like, there's never a bad time to buy.
Well, I was going to ask, because right now we're in a time just like that, right? Where it looks like everything you can get on a discount. So are you still the same way? Like, a lot of people are wondering if they should be buying all types of stock right now.
Oh, it's the worst time to buy stock right now. No, wait till it tanks if you want to buy stock. But the thing is, I realized, even with all the ups and downs, right, of the market, when I looked at real numbers, and that's the thing, like, I like proof, I like evidence, And so I started really looking at it. I'm like, wait, the last 30 years, and this is true even today, the last 30 years, the S&P 500, right, the stock market has only done about 7.5%, not 10 or 12, like I was telling people, because that's the thing, is like, the whole averages that they're giving you is true and false at the same time, right? So let me give you an example. Like, say you have 10 grand, right? And say that the market drops like it did, and say you end up losing half your money, right? You lose 50%. That means you're left with $5,000. Now, I remember I learned this actually while I was a financial advisor. All of us were stumped. So we all got this wrong. The guy asked, he says, if you lost half of it, you're down to $5,000 and you lost 50%. What do you need to get back to zero? And we all said 50%, right? He's like, wrong. He's like, look at this. He's like, say you went down to $5,000. He's like, 50%, you make half more. That's only $2,500. You only made it to $7,500. He's like, if you lost half your money, that means you need to double it again, which is 100%. So although you lose 50, you get 100, right? If you think about that, and again, I hate throwing out math on a podcast, right? But I mean, you go back to the grade school math of average, trying to figure out averages, right? You have 100, you have minus 50. That means you're left with 50, right? Divided by 2 years. You say that happened in 2 years. That's a 25% average return. So even though you just went down from 10,000 and to 5 and then back up to 10 again, you said, hey, I made zero. In reality, the average return is 25%.
Right. I get it.
And in truth, they actually charge you fees in those. So you probably only have like $9,700. So you actually lost money, but somehow you made a 25% return. And this is what happened even like the last 20 years, right? I remember like from 2000 to 2015, after I got out of the market and stuff, and I was telling people to get out of the stock market, like not put money there. There's people like by 2015 said, you know what? It says I should have made 4% a year, but I finally broke even. Like I finally got to the point where I'm at where I was in 2015 years ago. My money finally they're like, I would have been better off in a crappy savings account. Like I would have made way more money in there than in the stupid stock market, And that's the hard thing, is that there's a lot of financial advisors today that have only been around the last 5 or 10 years telling you the market's awesome. Keep putting it in because it goes up. It's like, you guys just don't realize that in history, we have never had a time where we had 10 up years in a row. Like that doesn't happen. That kind of thing doesn't really happen. Like you might be lucky. Usually the normal is 5 years up, 2 years down at best, right? So if we have 10 years up in a row, right, or pretty much in a row, from 2009 all the way to 2019, and then there's 2020 we're in right now,
right?
You got to start asking yourself, wait, should this keep going up?
Right.
Yeah. So this is like the worst time to buy stocks. This is like saying, hey, you know what? Like just because it dropped a few pennies, like I should go buy this because it's on sale. Like, no, that 1% off, like if you're going to get in, wait for the 50% off sale. Okay.
Well, how does someone know when because obviously there's a lot of timing with that. And if you were great at it, then obviously you'd be a billionaire. So how does someone know when it's a real fire sale that it's 50, 75% off?
You never do. That's why you never do it. That's why the worst place to put your money is the stock market. Because so they'll always tell you, don't time the market, right? That's why financial advisors say, don't try to do it. And by the way, I taught 200 people how to trade stocks and options. After I was a financial advisor, I started doing that for a little bit. I'm telling you, very few people, even if they're given like as much odds of success as possible, they'll still screw it up, right? So you think about trying to trade in the market, day trading and all that stuff, it doesn't. Most people hardly make a dime doing that. Most people don't make hardly anything. So I just tell people, stay out of the stock market, right? Like that's not where the wealthy people make their money. You'll never find, I mean, other than George Soros, that's the one billionaire you'll see that's in the list. That's a trader, right? And he trades foreign exchange. He trades like currencies, like money, but Warren Buffett, people say, well, Warren Buffett does that. No, he doesn't. He buys companies. He buys real companies. He is a business owner that buys companies. He doesn't buy stocks. I mean, there's even a soundbite from Trump, and someone's like, when the markets started going down, they're like, do you own stocks? Did you lose money too? He's like, I don't own stocks. I own companies. Like, that's what the wealthy people do. They're like, stock market is for like people that don't know any better. Like that's where they throw ignorant people that they think are dumb. They tell them to go put money in the stock market. That's what I realized as a financial advisor. I'm like, I'm just a pawn. I'm a salesman in a suit, telling people to put money in a place that none of us as financial advisors got financially free off of. In fact, there was nobody financially free in all the offices that I knew of. All the financial advisors I met with, though even the ones that made hundreds of thousands a year, weren't financially free. They made great money on commissions, but they did not make great money on their investments. That's where it's like, oh my gosh. But when I met people that were millionaires, they were business owners, they were real estate investors, they were in that space, right? Yeah. So that's where in 2006, I'm like, okay, I see the writing on the wall. This is crap. Like I can't teach this anymore and stay in integrity, right? Like I can't just do this for a paycheck. So I'm like, I'm done. So 2006, I said, I'm done. I'll be a mortgage broker and I'll teach ballroom dancing at the local university. So that's what I started doing, right? But it drove me nuts. I didn't know what those guys knew. And so I started connecting with those guys, started getting mentored by one of them. And that was March, I quit as being a financial advisor, March of 06. By July of 06, without hardly any money, I was able to retire. I was able to essentially create like what Tim Ferriss would call the 4-hour work week.
Yeah.
I created that several years before he wrote the book. Like I actually did the 4-hour work week where I'm like, I created residual streams of income through my business. Then I started adding on passive streams of income by doing things like real estate, right? Yeah. Now it sounds great because I'm like, hey, I'm 28 years old. I don't have to work anymore. What am I going to be when I grow up? So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go teach people how to get out of the rat race. I'm going to teach them how to do what I did. Mm-hmm. So I went and partnered with a few guys there that were all kind of like me. And I did the dumbest thing I could ever done, right? Right before the recession, this is 2007, right? I come out of retirement. And as we're getting out, they said, hey, we want you to be a team player and focused. So cut off your streams of income. So basically get rid of your residual and passive streams of income and just focus on this, being actively involved in our company and teaching and educating people, right? Well, I did that. So I cut off my streams of income. At the same time, I also had real estate, but I wasn't the type of real estate I was buying. I was gambling with it. I wasn't like really being an investor. I was being a gambler because I'm like, well,
what type of real estate was it?
It was just buying properties, but I was buying it based on it had to work only if the values went up. So I was basing on values always going up, right? Kind of like what people base on the stock market. Well, as long as it goes up, I make money, right? I was doing that with real estate. I wasn't focusing on cash flow. I was focusing on trying to make the big checks, right?
I was basically appreciation.
Yeah, I was all appreciation. I was like Babe Ruth trying to strike, trying to hit home runs, but all of a sudden when the recession hit, I'm striking out. Right. So it was a double whammy. Plus, in our business, we were focused on real estate investors that now we didn't have any money. So our business started tanking. My real estate was tanking. I didn't have multiple streams of income anymore. And so I went from millionaire to upside down millionaire within about a year, right? I went from like, hey, like this is awesome. Like I'm living the life. I'm driving my Mercedes, got my big mansion and all that kind of crap. And which didn't mean squat. It was all for making up for my ego, right? Like I was just trying to make up a void of my lack of confidence in who I was being. And so all of a sudden I'm like, crap, like now I'm in the hole $16,000 a month. I'm now over $1 million in debt. What am I going to do? I had no money and no credit left. Like there's nothing. I already maxed out my lines of credit. I hadn't have any savings. Most of my friends were like, I'm gone. Like I'm not sticking around for this. And so, and not to mention, I was supposed to be the guy that had it all figured out, teach people to get out of the rat race. And now I was back in it. Right. So now I have this whole head trash going on. Like, dude, you're basically out of integrity. Like you're full of crap, right. So I had that struggle. And so I switched it. I stopped telling people how to get out of the rat race. I started teaching them what I was doing, which was getting resourceful, finding money. And that's like on my website, I actually have like an ebook on there, like some of those top ways I did it.
Okay.
Like start tracking my money, right? I started like looking at what I'm spending and what I'm making and really like honing in on that. A biggest thing I probably did that was huge was besides just like understanding that everything happens for a reason, right? Like any hardship you're going through, because it sucked. I mean, it sucked. I mean, there was even a point where my wife, now my ex-wife, right? But my wife at that time, she's like, should I just take the kids and go? Like, should I just leave so you can figure this out? I'm like, that's the worst time to leave. Like, I'm already feeling depressed and like I'm not a man, right? And then you're going to say, here, I'm going to go move in with my sister so that you can figure crap out. I'm like, no, like I need support right now. Like I'm not feeling that. And I was holding it in. Like I was becoming more introverted again because I didn't want to. I felt like I was going to spread this disease of depression or something on other people. So I did the worst thing I do. I started cutting myself off from relationships. And the key is, if you want to create wealth or get out of any financial bind, is you got to figure out, you got to keep asking and not asking how you make more money. That's the wrong question to ask, because people have asked that for hundreds of years and they still stay broke, right? Mm-hmm. So that's obviously not the right question to ask. The right question to ask is, how can I create more value for more people? What can I do to serve people, solve problems? What can I do to at least some way add value in their lives that they want me in it, that they're saying, here, I will pay you so that I can have whatever you can offer me, right? It could be a skill or a talent. It could be your body, like, doing physical labor, mental, spiritual stuff, whatever, right? It doesn't matter. People will pay you, say, listen, like, I see what you have as valuable. I want that in my life. Here, I will give you this paper for that, right? That's basically, that's when money became demystified for me, is when I realized it was all about creating value. I'm like, wait a minute. It's not about trying to make money and trying to figure out who I can, like, how can I make money? But sadly, it'll probably be at somebody's loss, because when they spend money on me, then they lose money, but I make money. So I thought it was always a zero-sum game, right? Where there's a winner and a loser.
Right.
But in reality, the truth is that if you do it right and you're focused on serving people and solving problems, both people win. Like, you actually elevate society. And like we actually all prosper together. It's the best way to do it. We don't need crappy government programs to do it, because they suck at creating value. They just suck value, right? Like anything the government touches, they make more expensive. I mean, look at our health insurance, right? Our healthcare went up because the government got involved. Like, it would have been better off getting them out. Like, our expenses go up whenever they throw taxes on our gasoline. Not now. Now it looks awesome, but our actual real gasoline prices are way lower. It's just because the government says, hey, let's tax it, because we got to control it. It's like, get out of the way, so that's the thing, is like, when you start to focus on value creation, like, that's when making money and creating wealth is easy, and that's where we all prosper together as a people, right? But again, if you think like, I got to get mine, like, if people start having that kind of attitude, like, I got to get mine, I got to take what's mine because no one's going to give it to me. And yeah, you shouldn't be entitled. But at the same time, you don't have to take from somebody else. It's not about luck or exploitation. It's really very much a recipe. It's just about, how can I serve you? How can I create a win-win for you, where money is just a natural byproduct, right? That's the key. And so that's where I started to get focused on that. I started turning it around instead of getting depressed. And I was really depressed for like months, right?
But let me ask, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but like, as you're going through this mental, roller coaster, was there one mentor? Was there one book? Was there one blog? Was there one thing that helped you to be able to come out on the other side and feel like you had hope?
I was consuming books and blogs and stuff like crazy. I'll tell you,
give me one that was like in the midst of your pit. You were like, oh, this is it.
There's actually two books that I read at the same time that did it for me. One was called 3 Feet from Gold, from my friends Sharon Lecter, who co-wrote Rich Dad Poor Dad, right?
Yeah.
And Greg Reed also as well. It's the Think and Grow Rich for the 21st century. So it's taking real stories, like the owner of Chick-fil-A, taking him, like what they went through. Like, a lot of what was interesting is that I was at the low point, right? A lot of the stories they're sharing in that book were about people chuckling to themselves, saying, yeah, it took me 10 years to become an overnight success, right? And talking about all the crap they went through, right? Mm-hmm. So I read that book, And then there was another book I read, which was actually, it's not the best example of a guy to follow, but hey, it works. But Donald Trump, this would be the humblest book that he wrote, which means it was just a little bit prideful, right? A little bit egotistical. But he wrote a book called Never Give Up. And Never Give Up got me some good stuff too, because in that book, he talked about when he was going through his worst time, he was $900 million in debt, right? In the early 90s. He bought an airline. The airline failed. Like he talks about, he's like, I never went bankrupt. He didn't, but he had businesses that did, right? But he was $900 million in debt, and he had, his problems were like $1 billion problems, right? Like when he bought, like, what was it, the old Chicago Sun-Times building? You're from Chicago, right? He bought that building to turn into a Trump thing. Like he was worried about like the lake coming in underneath where the parking and the buttresses were and stuff, and he's like, this is gonna be like $30 million, and then they,
talks about it all in this book.
Yeah, talks about it in the book, like all of his stuff, and even like trying to buy a golf course in Scotland, how he had to like keep creating value for people. Like he had to go and create value, like say, here guys, I'm not trying to ruin your lives. Here's what I'm gonna do, try to give you something good for you. Like trying to, you really see how he's a negotiator, right? It's kind of like, oh, that's cool. Now he still has ego. Like he's still, here's what's cool. Like, he has one of his most popular books is called The Art of the Comeback, right?
Yeah.
What I didn't know until that book, Never Give Up, he said it in that book. He says, in The Art of the Comeback, he hadn't come back yet. He wrote it almost as a prophecy of how he was going to come back. Mm-hmm. I was like, my mind was blown. I'm like, that's incredible. Like, how much faith does that take to do that? That's when I had some respect for him, like, before he was president, right? But, and then still, I respect him to some level. Like, I'm not like, I don't think he's the best character, or whatever, but hey, you have to respect what he had accomplished and what he had overcome. Like, you have to respect somebody for that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so that gave me hope. It gave me enough hope to say, and in fact, I remember one quote in his book, he said, if there's 20 negative things, he'd focus on one positive. So there was days, the only thing I would say is, I'm breathing. Like, I'm alive. That's pretty much it. Everything else sucks, but at least I'm alive. Or when I had collector calls, because I had collector calls multiple times a day. I had their numbers memorized. And instead of like avoiding their calls, because it was really easy to just like, I got to focus, I got to work. I was like, you know what? I'm going to answer these calls. Because I'm like, you know what? These guys call me more than anybody. So I started answering the calls. I started calling them I love you calls. Right? Because I'm like, hey, my friends don't call me anymore, but these guys still do. So I'm like, these are my only friends now. Hey, how's it going? They're like, good. We're here to collect a debt. Yeah, I know. Yeah. So anyways, are you going to pay it? Not today. When are you going to pay it? I don't know. We're going to keep calling back. I hope so. It's good talking to you. See ya. Click, and it went on like that for a couple years, right? Like, just trying to dig out of that hole from 2008 going to 2009. And I remember that when I was right about the point where I felt things changing, I just started becoming grateful. Whatever I could be grateful for was awesome. And here's another key thing too, is I thought, maybe there's a purpose behind this. What if there are no accidents? What if everything happens for a reason? Right. Maybe there's a divine purpose that not only will I come back stronger, maybe I can even help somebody because of it. Right. I thought if I could just help one person, maybe even on DreamNation, right? Like if I could just help one person, that would be worth it. And so it gave me that hope to go through. And I remember even having an argument with my wife at that time where she's like, how long are we gonna have to suffer? I was like, you know what? There's gonna be a day where I'm gonna tell you, I told you so. And I left the door, I slammed the door and ran, drove off to work, right? That was August of 2009. October 2009, things turned around. Like things started coming around where I was making more money than I was spending, and making surplus, right? And there was like no end in sight
at this time.
I was still coaching and consulting people. Okay. But you remember I mentioned like I was getting resourceful, like that book I have on my website. Right. So I started teaching that to the clients. As I stopped trying to pretend teaching like get out of the rat race. I just accepted fully, and especially like how to pay off debt. I got really creative about how to pay off debt. Negotiating with creditors, all that kind of stuff, right? So I started getting people. I was like, because the people would come to me, they say, Chris, I would love to hire you as a coach, but I don't have the money. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, I'm over $1 million in debt. I get their situation is not nearly as bad as mine. I bet you I could find the money. And so I would tell them, I was like, if I can find the money, will you pay me? They're like, well, yeah. I'm like, done. And then I would show them how to free up cash, like find money that they didn't realize was there, right? Or how to like pay off the right debts and not the others, like don't follow the Dave Ramsey approach. Like Dave Ramsey's full of crap. Like avoid that crap. Like do this instead, like this actually creates freedom. Like cash flow is the key to freedom. So I started focusing all on cash flow, like how to have more income than your expenses without being cheap, without living on rice and beans, right? And I did that for a few key influencers. So I was in it just long enough. I didn't quit. Just long enough that some key influencers in certain communities, like in the dental community, like dentists, for example, right? Or chiropractors started coming in. I remember there was one chiropractor that he came in and I was like, you know what? I bet you're overpaying on taxes. Let's have you talk to my CPA. He talks to my CPA, finds out he's overpaying $50,000 a year in taxes. And he can go back and amend it and get some of that money back. God. So he's like, he started crying, like bawling like a baby. Like he's like, I can't believe this is happening. I'm like, you're welcome.
Right.
The word, right? Like tell the word. And he was like a chiropractic coach. So he started telling all these chiropractors he was working with, like, these guys are awesome. Like these guys find money. Like they're like creative with stuff. And so I started getting this flood of leads all of a sudden. We went from almost bankrupt as a company in 2009. And then all of a sudden that end of 2009 into 2010, we went to like $5 million in the company. And so, yeah, that started helping me pay things back. I wasn't taking all the 5 million, obviously. Right. But, I went from like barely scraping by to get a few clients, all of a sudden, like just massive influx. Like people were just raving about it because we were, again, creating value, solving problems for what people needed at that time, which was towards the end of the recession. People wanted to figure out how to get creative. So that's what happened. And so, that consistently happened. In 2012, I quit working with that partner. Had a 2-year non-compete, started my Money Ripples company from scratch in 2012, but still first year hit 100 grand in that year and then just kept going from there. And so that's what was kind of cool is that, again, just keep not giving up, just keep going, keeping that same mentality, right? Like focusing on the positive, even if it's like one thing, right? Just kept going. Even when there's all the calls coming in, still collectors calling years later, it's like, great, here we go. I even had,
love you.
yeah, my I love you calls, right? I'll tell you, interesting thing is like one of the credit cards already got written off because it's past that statutory limitation. They couldn't collect anymore.
Yeah.
To be fully transparent, 2 months ago, a collector called for that credit card. It was American Express through Costco, right? And they're like, yeah, it's up to like, it's like 22 grand or something like that, and after fees and everything. Yeah. And I'm like, like this is already past statute of limitations. You can't get anything from me on this. And they're like, yeah, we know. They're basically just trying to collect anything they can get. Like I'm like, you just waste your money buying it from another company because you're not going to get anything. They're like, okay. And that was it. They can't call again. Right. They're like, done. So you're not going to pay it? Nope. And then my wife's like, we could pay that if you want. Like, is it worth your integrity? And I'm like, technically I don't have to pay anything, right? I'm like, I just called. So I'm like, okay, I redialed. I'm like, hey, I was just talking to so-and-so. Is she there? They're like, yeah. And so they get her on the phone. I'm like, hey, I just talked to you like 10 minutes ago. Do you remember me? Yeah. I had second thoughts. Can I just pay you $1,000? And can we just settle for $1,000? Would that be cool with you and your manager? Well, let me ask. And like, seriously, 2 minutes later, she comes back because they already were going to get nothing.
Right.
She's like, he'll take it. I'm like, great, I'll pay you $1,000 right now. Wait, you guys are legit, right? Like, you're not just scamming me. Okay, good. Like, send me the confirmation stuff. All right, great. And I paid it. I paid the $1,000. I'm like, all right, now it's gone. Now the last of the debts was gone, right? Right. But that's a cool thing is like, paying those back to free up that mind. And of course, by December 2016, I was able to build up passive income from real estate and other stuff that I was able to retire once again, when I was 39 years old. So that's the thing. It's like, it was almost like it took 10 years to become the overnight success, right? From that low. And I think that's, if there's ever a message of hope that I have for people, it is that is you have hope. Like, I guarantee you probably won't be as bad as me. I mean, there are a few people I've met. I'm like, okay, you beat me, right? Like, you're 5 million in debt or 10 million in debt. Or I have a friend that he was 26 million in debt from a apartment building that he had in Ohio that a freezing storm came in, busted everything, and then the city took it away from him and he lost 26 million bucks. I'm like, all right, you got me beat. But for the most part, like, when people are like, oh, my it's so depressing, like I'm just paycheck to paycheck. I'm like, That's awesome. I was 16,000 in the hole each month, short $16,000. Like if I'm short 16K and you're just paycheck to paycheck, you've got hope. Like you can do it. Like there's hope.
So there's a couple of things that I want to tap into. First off, you're $16,000 in debt. What was the debt from? Did you have too many employees? Did you have a big commercial lease? Like, because somebody right now, they're trying to figure out, how do they not get themselves in that much debt? How can they be able to see it sooner? So like, what is the advice that you have for someone like that?
Yeah, that's a key thing too. Cause I try to do the numbers in my head. Like if I even had all my debt paid off, I still would have been in the hole about 8 or 10,000 a month. So even if I was debt free, right, I still would have been in the hole. And that's what some people might misunderstand. It's like, no, like you said, like I had like an assistant I was paying for my office. I was paying office rent. I was paying way too much rent for that office. I found out later. They basically were gouging me. But again, I had so much money. It was like air. Like when money's so abundant, you're like, I don't worry about it. It's only when somebody cuts off your air, you're like, crap, now I can't breathe. Now I want it, So that was a big thing. It's like the rent. I mean, business expenses were ridiculous because I was just paying for stuff that really shouldn't have been paying for at home. I mean, I was hiring people to do all this kind of stuff, to clean the house, to do yard work and everything. I'm like, you know what? I can mow my own dang lawn. Like, I don't have to do that, And so, yeah, I mean, I had to sell off stuff. I turned in my Mercedes. I was already about a month past due. I knew at 2 months they would try to repossess it, right? They try to repo it. So I'm like, I just took it to the dealership. I said, hey, you guys are going to repo this anyways. So here's the keys. Take it. I'm going to drive a $3,000 Hyundai, So I turned in my Mercedes, and that thing was, they ended up auctioning off for $30,000 less than I owed, So, and I remember a guy even calling up a collector saying, hey, so you owe $30,000. Can you make a $1,200 a month payment to pay this back? I said, my payment before was $1,100 a month. If I could make $1,200, I would have been able to make the $1,100 payment. You wouldn't be calling me right now.
Right.
And they're like, well, are you going to pay it? I'm like, I can't. I don't have any money. And he's like, you're the reason this country's failing right now. You're the reason we're in a recession right now. I'm like, dude, like I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars hiring people like you. Shut up. Like, get out of my face. Like, it's like, you're the reason why people are freaking victims in America right now, And I was just like, I was so pissed at that, Like, and again, I'm trying to do business while dealing with that head trash, right? So yeah, I mean, I just had to. That's the thing. I wasn't paying attention to my expenses at home or at work. Once I started really like nitpick and say, what am I really spending money on? What's really worth it? Can I reduce costs? Can I pay off stuff? Some bills I just didn't pay, like some debts I just stopped paying on. I'm like, I can't make the payments. They're going to go into collections. What are they going to do? They can't throw you into debtor's prison. That doesn't exist in the US, right? They're just going to call you and hound you. And at worst, maybe they get a judgment against you. But most cases just goes to collections forever. It's like, they're not going to kill you, and I could have filed for bankruptcy. It would have been way easier to dig out of this hole if I did. But someone just told me, don't do it. Like, no, just dig out of this. Like, you got to pay this stuff back. Even if you have to settle with people and negotiate, great. It's a win-win, because if they accept it, they obviously they actually believe that, like you said earlier, right? With the $100,000 a year thing, is that if they accept it, it's because they believe that, hey, that's worth more than us not getting paid. So we'll take the money. And I'm like, hey, it's worth more to me not to pay all this full in cash. And so we were both happy, and once I got over all the head trash, it was so much easier to get through that.
I love it, man. There's so much value in there, and I appreciate you sharing. That takes a lot. Obviously, you're way past that now, but even so, there's somebody right now that's listening that maybe they're not 16,000 in debt, but they're 3,000 in debt, and they're spiraling in the wrong direction. So them hearing this can maybe help them to where they hit 4,000 or 5,000, and they say, okay, listen, I need to cut off these things that are more liabilities than expenses, and this is a perfect opportune time. If I listen, I hear that it could go to 16, where it could be even worse. Right now, I don't have it as bad, so I love it. Talk to me about one thing I'm super interested in hearing is, how did you come to connect with Johnny Lee Dumas and then Tim Ferriss? Two big people, entrepreneurs, and especially the last 5 to 7 years. How did that all come about?
Yeah, I actually remember meeting Tim Ferriss for the first time in 2009. He actually came by our office, stopped by, and kind of shocked me because I knew he was a wrestler, but I was like, dude, he really is a wrestler. He's like 5'0", like really super short. I was like, whoa, like he's a stocky guy, walking around and stuff. So he seemed like a cool guy.
UFC fighter?
What's that? Oh, he kind of looked like that. Yeah. Like he's just a stocky little guy, he's probably like 5'4", 5'5",
Okay.
But anyways, like, so I'd met him a few years back, and then I think it was 2013. I've heard of John Lee Dumas.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was trying to reach out to him for a year to get on a show, and it was crickets, right? I mean, we are Facebook friends. And so like, I would share some of his stuff and try to get his attention, because I'm like, how can I serve this guy? How can I do something, right? And then, there's another guy I knew, a mutual friend of ours, that says, hey, I'm putting this book together, and I'm just reaching out to people to see who wants to maybe co-author a book with Tim Ferriss and John Lee Dumas. And I was like, right here, I'll do that. Like, what does it take? And they said, all right, well, it's $2,000 to get in, but you get 200 books with it. So basically you're buying like $10 a book of your own book, right? So I'm like, all right, $2,000. Cool. I'll do it. Why not? And so I remember we did our chapter and everything. And then when we're done with our interview, my friend Woody, right, the one that connected us, he said, anything I do to serve you. And I've learned after the last recession and coming out of things, it's good to ask for things, right? It's just be okay to say, yeah, I'm willing to ask for something. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I was like, yeah, you know what? I've been trying to get John Lee's ear forever, dude. Like, how can I get on his show? He's like, easy. I'll send him an email right now. 30 minutes later, John comes back, JLD comes back, says, let's get you on my show. I'm 4 months booked out, but let's get it on. We get you on. And so we did, got me on the show. And the funny thing is, like, the first recording we did, we recorded it, and then something bad happened to the recording. So he lost it. He's like, I'm so sorry. This never happens, but you and one other person, I lost the recordings. I'll bump you up on the list. Let's get you recorded. So the second recording was actually better than the first interview.
Yeah.
And that one just boosted my numbers. Like, but it was seriously just that connection. I was like, if you can't find a way to serve somebody, I mean, find a way to serve them, right? I mean, if you have a podcast, it's easy because you're just like, dude, let me interview them, right?
Right. Absolutely.
Easy, but like, I was like, what can I do to serve them? Or if you can't do that, what can I do to buy my way in? Like, or how can I, where are they going to be? Like, are they going to be at an event? Great. How do I pay my way to go to that event just to meet somebody? I mean, that's seriously what I did to meet a few people. Like where I knew Greg Reed already, that guy that wrote 3 Feet from Gold, and Sharon Lecter was there. I wanted to meet her face to face. And there was one other woman I wanted to meet. And I even told that woman, I said, she's like, why are you here? I'm like, just to meet you. Actually, I'm just here in California to meet you. Like, right. I don't even care about this conference. Like, I just want to create relationships. And we created a friendship from that, right? Like, that's the thing. Wealth is in the relationship that you have. Like, when you have those relationships and you have those people around you, it's hard to go broke. It really is.
It is. I love that you said that. You are the sum of the 5 people that you surround yourself with the most. And even if they're not in your direct circle, if you have enough relationships, you cannot go broke, just like you said, like, because that's everything in the end. Yeah. And that's the thing. When I first got into real estate, I was thinking that I would do it all myself, right? Because that's what you're thinking. You're an investor. You own all of the properties. Well, you forget of all the relationships. Some people just don't think of all the relationships you have to create to even get all of those properties, right? Yeah. Because you need your bankers. Well, bankers are only going to let you get so many loans out, right? If you're talking about a traditional bank. So then you need hard money, private money lenders. You need relationships with good contractors. You also need relationships because other people are going to find the deals. And sometimes you need to be able to get your way into the third of that deal if you didn't find the deal yourself. Yep. Right. So there's so many different things. And I've done the same thing when it comes to going to conferences because I want to meet certain people. And it's so funny because people think when they go to conference, you're looking to really get the people on stage. No, the value really is in all of the conversations that's happening in the hallway. Those are the people that are really just a couple steps ahead of you. And sometimes those are the executive assistants or the camera guys or whatever for the Sharon Lecter, for the Robert Kiyosaki. And if you build your relationship in with that person, then it's so much easier to get in. And just like you said, 30 minutes from there, it's like, hey, you know what? Let's set you up on the show. Whereas if you would have just came green, there's so many other people. So you have to find your way in the back door when everyone's trying to go front door because it's hard for anybody to make themselves stand out when in so many different, personalities and everything. So I love that you brought that point up and that you were transparent in sharing it.
That was my secret for launching Money Ripples. That's how I hit over 100,000 the first year with a non-compete, with brand new relationships. It was just purely, how can I serve them? Like I would take them out to lunch or whatever, right? I would just like hey, like, I just want to get to know you. Like, what's going on in your life? And I'd find out one thing personally or professionally they're dealing with. It's like, great. Can I personally solve that problem? Or do I know someone who can help them? So it was just like, and they even say like, well, what do you do? I'm like, I do this, but hey, back to you. Like, I was like, we got our lives to get to know each other, but I want to know more about you. And because I try to show up as a servant, that's the thing is like most people show up to the table, like stuffing the napkin, like ready for a feast. If you take that napkin out and drape it over your arm, like you're a servant, and everything changes, like that's when you, like you said, you distinguish yourself. You stand out because you're like, hey, like everybody else coming at me saying like, hey, I love you, right? Whatever. Right. But when someone's like, how can I serve you? Like, what can I do for you? It's just, people don't do that anymore. Like, it's so rare to find that. If you can find somebody that does that, you're like, even if you're like, I don't even know who this person is, but I don't want to turn them down because that's different. That sounds cool. So I'll give them at least a moment of my time to find out why they're doing that,
I love it. I love it, man. And so again, there's so much value in what you just said. And I pray that somebody looks at that and they figure out, listen, how can I serve my way in? Or how can I even buy my way in? Right. Because in the world today, you're going to invest one of two things. And this is something that I've definitely learned. You're going to either invest your own time, right, and your own energy, or you're going to invest your money. Right. So you have to decide which one is more valuable to you right now. If you're somebody who has a good 9-to-5 job, or you're making 6 figures, you already have good money, but you don't have a lot of time. Right. So that means that you should invest some of that money into getting you speeding up your process. Right. Because you could have still got Johnny Lee Dumas, but then it might have took you another 2 years of sharing his stuff and everything else, where then you would have missed the opportunity to co-author the book. Right. So that's what I love it, man. I'm glad that you said that. It's just all about the relationship. Wealth is in the relationships.
It is. I'll tell you, if you want to get hope from that, like that one interview I did, I've actually done 2, right, with John since then. Yeah. That one interview I did made me about 30 to 40,000 bucks. I was like, $2,000 to make 30 or 40 grand. And then I still sold the books too. That was worth it.
Wow.
But here's the cool thing. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do that again. Because I'm like, I'm more powerful now than I was then. I'm like, so I did a second interview with him just like 4 years ago. It was 4 years ago, 2016. Did a second interview. And that one, I'm telling you, like I could see direct relations from that for people that came out of it. I have to this date made well over $1 million from that second interview.
Let me ask, because somebody's thinking, and I'm thinking it as well. What was the first book that you were selling? The program. What did you sell to make the 30 to 40,000?
That one was just coaching. It was just coaching. I referred them to my website the first time. And so I got like tons of opt-ins in one day, right? It flooded my, which was great. I got a lot of followers pretty quickly. And then there's direct people that hired me as a coach, right? The second time around, I got the idea. I said, wait a minute, I have my own podcast as well. These people are podcast listeners. Why not refer them to my podcast instead of just my website, right? So instead of trying to build my email that way, I was like, go listen to my podcast. So the second interview, I said, go listen to my podcast, The Chris Miles Money Show. Check it out, right? And then my numbers overnight doubled on my downloads, right? And what happened from there is, I'll even tell you a very specific story. There's a guy that reached out like 5 months later even. I mean, there's people that came from that interview and I made tens of thousands from that one. But one guy reached out, he said, hey, I thought it was really good when you talk about cash flow. Can you come on my show and talk about that too? So I went on his podcast. And then I just happened to drop a little thing of, oh yeah, like, and he's an investor, right? So I said like, yeah, if you actually do this, you can actually make money in 2 places at the same time with your investment money. He's like, hey, we need to do a second show. So we do a second show. That one was so good that he's like, dude, I'm becoming a client. I made like, 20,000 off that. Then he referred me to another guy. That guy was even, he had like bigger like not a bigger following, but better quality following, right? It was like only 1,200 followers, but they're all like doctors and stuff, right?
Right.
Well, that one relationship alone, that right there, I mean, that one already made me like 800,000 bucks in the last 3 years from that relationship. And then that other guy, I'm still making several 100,000 from that guy, from that interview we've done. And then he's even gone and done webinars with me and stuff too. It's like that relationship just keeps going, and that ripple effect, right? And that's the thing that's so cool is that you never know what that one little thing does, but it always takes so many little actions that you have to do all these small little things forever. I mean, because I could have sucked at the interview and nobody would have cared, right?
Right.
But it just depends on like how you show up, how you progress, how you keep just moving, keep being consistent, never give up. That persistency will pay off. It always does.
I love it. I love it. Has there been, I know you've mentioned the 4 hour work week. Has there been any other book that's really helped you over, let's even use the last 1 year. Let's make it relevant. Has there been one book that you've read in the last 1 year that's really changed your life for the better?
Yeah. I would say, I guess maybe I read this one a few years ago, but I still use it again, like yearly almost, right? I always
Yeah.
reference back to it. It's a book called The Pumpkin Plan by Mike Michalowicz. So
Okay.
he's the same guy that wrote the book Profit First. He's
Okay. Yeah.
known for that one. He wrote another book called The Pumpkin Plan, which talks about farmers that have prize winning pumpkins, those humongous ones you see on the news, right?
Yeah.
So he talks about like the whole process, like a farmer goes through. They have to buy these seeds from Nova Scotia because it's a certain breed in Nova Scotia. You got to buy these seeds from, sometimes up to $100,000 to buy these stupid seeds, right?
Yeah.
Plant them, and then as the pumpkins grow on the vine, there's multiple pumpkins. You keep chopping off the smaller ones until there's eventually just one big one the vine feeds into and grows it to be huge. And that's how people get these prize winning pumpkins.
Right.
He talks about that relates to business too, is that if you start chopping off all the small stuff and going for the big one, just like I figured out with my podcast, that was my big thing. Is like my podcast now is like the kind of the big driver of my business. I don't ever seek out business anymore. Like my podcast does it all for me, because people follow it and they're like, dude, I'm a rippler too. Like, this is awesome,
Right.
and just, things come from that. And not to mention, the funny thing is I don't even need the money from it. Like I'm already getting passive income from other sources. I don't even need that money. It's just all gravy. But the thing is, it's like, it's serving and helping so many people. Right. And when I started funneling all my business into that, in 2015, I went through a divorce. So I went through like another low right then. But I did differently from the recession. I learned I didn't cut off relationships. I actually got out. I knew I was going to get through it. I knew it was just a matter of time. And I even started listening to my intuition more. I stopped listening to certain coaches. I even started telling them, I even did the opposite of their advice. And I actually started making more money. And so it revolutionized my business about 5 years ago beyond that. And then it was just a year later, I was able to retire.
I love it. I love it, man. This has been a phenomenal interview. And I'm so glad that we had you on here. I'm so glad we got to learn more of your story. I'm sure there's somebody out there, aside from me, that's super inspired, ready to run through a wall right now. But they're thinking to themselves that maybe they're not strong enough, they're not smart enough, or maybe they're just not creative enough and don't have enough resources. What's one thing that you would tell that person to get them to just take action?
That's BS. It's all BS. If you don't think you have anything, that's the problem. Like you have everything within you to create massive, massive wealth and happiness. Everything is already there. You just have to figure out how to tap into it, figure out what that is. Again, go back to, how do I create value for people? Because all happiness, all wealth in life comes from that. How can I serve people, solve problems for them? If you think you don't have answers, ask yourself, like, hey, what have I done? What have I overcome? Or what things that people say, how'd you do that? And you just kind of discredit it. You just brush off the side, which we all do. Things that come naturally to us, we discredit. We just think like, oh, everybody can do that. And people are like, no, like if they keep asking the same thing or ask you to help them figure out something, you have something right there that's money. Mm-hmm. So whatever you think you don't have, you do.
Got it. I love it, man. Well, it's been phenomenal, again, to have you on here. I look forward to having you again. And I know that the second time is going to be even bigger, even better. And we look forward to watching your progress. For anybody who wants to stay connected with you, tell us, where can we find you at?
Yeah, you can either go to my website, moneyripples.com, not nipples. That's a different website, but moneyripples.com, RIPPLES.com. You could go check out stuff there. There's blogs and things like that. Or like I mentioned before, the Chris Miles Money Show, my podcast. I mean, check that out. If you're struggling, if you're like the person you feel like you have to overcome, you're going through that deep abyss right now, I would recommend starting from the beginning. If not episode 1, at least right around episode 100. That was about 2015 when I was going through my divorce. So I had a lot of golden nuggets of going through crap, at that time. If you're at the point you're like, I'm on a high, like I've got money, I want to create passive income, then later episodes, I'm almost at episode 400 right now. So you can check that out. So.
Got it. We love it. And we will drop links to Money Ripples as well as the Chris Miles Money Show. Am I right?
Yep. Chris
Yeah,
Miles
we will
Money
drop
Show.
that all in the show notes. But again, thank you for coming on. It's been an honor, and we look forward to watching your success. We hope that you don't have any more, valleys, and we just keep all peaks from here on out. But either way, man, we'd love to support you, and we look forward to hearing the feedback. So thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you on the next one. That's the episode for today. Let me know if you got any value out of this, if you liked anything about it. Reach out to me on Instagram or Twitter, any of the social media networks, and of course leave me a review, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you're hearing this at. I would love to have a review to show what you're getting out of this. Is there anything that I could do better? Is there any way that I can add more value to you? So hopefully you all take some action today. That's my show. I love you all. Be great, but remember, we must take action.